So, welcome everyone to this edition of The Citizen on the Record. We have two very interesting personalities with us. One, of course, our own ambassador, KP Fabian, who we see continuously on contemporary affairs and diplomatic affairs. He was I think his last post as an ambassador was in Italy. And he has long decades of experience and is a voice that we respect and admire. And then, of course, there is Jehan Perera, who is the executive director at the National Peace Council of Sri Lanka. He is a very consistent, bold, courageous voice from Sri Lanka, who has never compromised with the powers that be and says it as it is. He's also from Harvard with a law and economics degree. So welcome both of you, and thank you for giving us this time. We'll start with you, Jehan, because you're where the action is. Can you tell us exactly what is happening as we speak?
As we speak, the main issue now concerns the possible resignation of the president in particular, and also the prime minister. The protesters have focused on getting the president to resign. The main slogan of all the protests so far for the last 4 months has been that the president should resign. It has also, in more recent times, encompassed the prime minister, who protesters feel was brought in to stabilize the existing government and provide a longer lease of life to the president. It also includes asking the entire parliament to quit. So it's a potentially anarchic situation that we have in our country. And this has arisen because of the unexpected, unforeseen collapse of our economy in the last 4 months. Right. Incomes have dropped by 50% of the general population. Immense economic hardship, long line, but 50%. What people have saved over their lives has been wiped out. And they are very, very angry about it. And now the question is, will the president and prime minister go after the presidential and prime ministerial officers have been overrun by people?
Right. So, Ambassador Fabian, you as a diplomat find it strange that I'll go back to the protests, of course, because they're historic, and we'll discuss that after this. But as of today, do you find it sort of strange that despite the people's power and the assertion of people's power, the president and the prime minister have fled the country or wherever they are, but they've not resigned officially?
Yes, I find it a little strange. Incidentally, I had one of my best postings in Sri Lanka as Deputy High Commissioner, 1979, 1982. Okay, now, you know what, the Sri Lankan, what's happening there reminds me of what was once said about the Germans. That suppose they want to sort of get into a railway station and stage a demonstration, they will first buy the whole tickets. So, legally minded. Now here is Rajapakse, who has fled, whatever be the circumstances. Still they are saying that he should resign. Now, I'm not finding fault with it. I'm only sort of putting it in context. What has happened on the 8th and 9th of July is a revolution. That was a Basti day for Sri Lanka. And recently, Seema, you might remember that when Ben Ali of Tunisia, he left for Saudi Arabia thinking that he was taking his wife for the pilgrimage. And then the flight came back without him. And then he insisted that he was president. But the Tunisians never asked him, please resign. You see? So I am, fascinated by the Sri Lankan approach to legality. Anyway, that said, I am also very disappointed to see the behavior of the political class. You know, there is an emergency and they have been out snailing the snail in responding to it. Ranil Wickremesinghe recognized the need for an all-party government only after his house was torched. But wasn't there need for an all-party government in the month of March or April? Why didn't Rajapakse address the nation and say, forgive me, bad judgment on my part, but now I want to have an all-party government, a government that will have full powers. I shall not exercise my executive powers. The government will restore the economy and there will be election to the parliament and to the presidency, and I shall not contest. If only he had said it, the course of history would have been different.
Yeah, and that is it. You see, in sitting here in New Delhi, a little away from it, it's seeming like a very huge, peaceful, fascinating revolution, as it were. And as the ambassador said, there was an opportunity in April when the government could have, or when the president could have acted a little taller than he has. So how do you see this people's surge and the movement and the missed opportunity of recent weeks? I'm again not going right into the past, I'll come back to that.
Yes, the protests were amazing. The way the people marched, came together peacefully, and in a way very trustingly, because they brought with them their little infant children also. I saw some parents carrying their little toddlers on their shoulders, and I saw others walking hand in hand with the little ones who were carrying Sri Lanka flags. And I saw old people on crutches and on wheelchairs, all going together, so determined. They're all unified. There was a lot of unity, all wanting this government to go, and particularly the president to go. And yeah, it's amazing that, and it speaks very badly for our political tradition that they didn't resign long ago. In other countries, we often say that even among our ministers, that in other countries, if there's a train crash, sometimes the minister, say in countries like Japan, they step down, they resign. In Britain, the Prime Minister Cameron, when he lost the vote on the European Union, he resigned. Boris Johnson, a bit different. He's also trying to stay, and he's saying he'll resign in September. And there is some doubt in Britain whether he will actually resign or not. But our people don't resign. Now, at the moment, we even have a cabinet. We had a cabinet minister till very recently who was convicted by the court of extortion, of extorting from a top businessman money. He was convicted and given a suspended sentence. Now he didn't resign, and he was not asked to resign by the government, by the president, because he's appealed to the higher court. So they are saying, okay, till his appeal is over, we will consider him to be innocent. So the president is reflecting that, has reflected that, and as Ambassador Fabian said, if only they had actually done what the ambassador said, which was also urged by civil society and the religious clergy also at an earlier time, this very sad situation wouldn't have arisen, where the president now is not giving his resignation. We don't know where he's in hiding. And the Prime Minister's house, his ancestral house built to him, given to him by his father, has been burnt down. It's a tragic situation that a peaceful revolution that started now is teetering. It's now we don't know in which direction it can go. It can get very ugly also.
So, you know, this Ambassador Fabian, I mean, I know we all love to say global phenomenon, but in recent times, you find that people who are heading governments are very, very reluctant to go, and they create conditions which really either work against them or they destabilize the country. Remember Trump and his people, Boris Johnson with 44 resignations, still not wanting to go, and now it's playing out in our own neighborhood, where you have got two leaders who are away and yet not resigned. So is this global or is this peculiar and specific to the political class?
I'll put it this way, Seema. We all should read again The March of Folly, Barbara Tuchman, where government leaders take decisions contrary to their own interest. Only thing to add is contrary to not only their own interest, contrary to the interest of their people, whom they are supposed to lead. So this, I'm afraid, quality of leadership, political leadership, generally speaking, has come down. If you look around the West and in the rest of the world.
Right. So Jan, to take off from what you said, I thought that was rather interesting, is that you have a now the movement, which was peaceful and it was leaderless, right? There is no leader. And because it is leaderless and because it's a mass movement, it can become anarchic. So what has happened to the opposition parties? We can understand the Rajapaksas and that whole lot going away. But are they giving a leadership, providing a leadership of any kind that you can see?
Yeah, no, they are actually not providing the leadership. At the main opposition party has been very cautious. It is not spelling out the alternative. It's not saying what should be done. It has actually not been saying what should be done for quite a long time, which is a great pity. Not spelling out an alternative vision. The opposition leader was also offered the position of heading the government or becoming the prime minister by the president when the president got into trouble. But the opposition leader, perhaps rightly, perhaps wrongly, said no, because he said, I cannot become prime minister, one thing, without a mandate from the people. I'll be taking decisions without the support of mandate of the people. That's one thing. That's a technical argument. But then there are two practical arguments also. One is that the president retained his powers. He didn't shed his powers. He showed no desire to shed his powers and probably had no intention to shed his powers, because concurrently there was also this proposal to have bring the 21st Amendment, which was to reverse the 20th Amendment that the same president brought in as soon as he was elected. The 20th Amendment gave him very excessive powers. And then the 21st Amendment was to reduce those powers, but actually he didn't reduce the powers in the 21st Amendment. In fact, he slightly increased the powers over the 20th Amendment. So that showed a mindset that didn't want to give up power. The opposition leader was therefore right in saying, if I accept the prime minister's position, I will have this president above me who can overrule me at any time. And also parliament. The majority in parliament is from the president's party. So I, as prime minister, will be in a rather helpless situation, because I will have a president above me who's more powerful, and I also will have a parliament which is dominated by the president's party. Then I will become the scapegoat. That was his feeling. Then, of course, there were others who said, no, real leadership means you should have taken the challenge and negotiated and fought within the system at that time. So he didn't do that. He's still around, and now he has offered himself as the next president, that he's willing to take it on. But I mean, as persons go, I think I feel confident. I feel that this person, this opposition leader, has good qualities. He's a tempered person. He's not rash. He's careful. He's cautious. That's what we need, and he's not got a bad reputation for being power hungry. In fact, he's not taking the power that's being offered to him. So there is some, but of course he also doesn't have the support of the masses of people at the moment. He lost the last presidential election to the president. The president, of course, campaigned on a very nationalist platform, nationalist and racist platform, and he won the election, frightening the people about the minorities, about our Tamil and Muslim minorities, portraying them as security threats and saying, I will protect you. And people voted for him, knowing that there was corruption and all involved, but still voting for him because they felt that he will protect the country and protect the ethnic majority. And it's a sense of betrayal now, because they now see that the economy has plunged, and they believe that the president and his family and the government have robbed the country of the dollars that it once had, which is true to some extent, not strictly true, because these problems come from the past also. So yes, there is a dearth of leadership. Actually, we don't know now. If the president and prime minister resign, who's to replace them? How are we going to replace them? And now one thinking is this, that the mandate that the ruling party and the government say they won it 3 years ago, we can say it has been withdrawn by the people, by the masses of people who went. And as Ambassador Jacob said, Fabian said, it's a revolution. And so then the majority in parliament shouldn't count anymore. And the new prime minister and new president should not be appointed by the majority in parliament. It should not be that. But they are the ones who are going to elect. Then it should be done by consensus. It should be a consensual decision. And of course, that's what we hope for. But there is indeed a problem. The individuals are not, we don't have the towering individuals. No one springs to mind as being a potential president. And secondly, the method, how are they going to select him? How are they going to select him or her, the new president, the new prime minister?
Right. Before going to Ambassador Fabian, I just want to continue with one thread that you just raised about the divisiveness, the divisive approach of the president and the government, earlier government. And the fact that the people are now united despite the anti-Tamil posturing, positions, anti-minority, Buddhist kind of nationalism, but it's all gone to the wind. Why? Just because of economics, right?
Yeah, because they didn't see the people felt, the Sinhala majority in particular, they were not hurting so badly. They wanted, their number one priority is security, safeguarding the territorial integrity of the country and the place of the Sinhalese Buddhists in the polity. That was their priority. And they also saw that throughout, even during the years of the war, when the Tamils were suffering like that, right? We are all suffering now with scarcities of everything, with long lines and not enough food to eat and no medicines. The Sinhalese were doing okay. And they were gradually improving their living standard. And so they didn't mind the corruption because these people who are corrupt were also protecting them, which is the most important thing. Now they find that they didn't actually protect them. In fact, they robbed everyone. That's how the people see it. They robbed us. They took, actually, in very colorful terms, they believed that plane loads of dollars were shipped to Africa, to Uganda. They actually believe that this is what happened. And this is why we don't have dollars today. And they feel betrayed. That sense of betrayal is there. And that's why they have suddenly turned against them. And now, and what made me happy during the protest, one of the things that made me very happy was that the young people who were leading the protests said, they were publicly saying, we will not fall for racism. We are Sinhalese, Tamils, Muslims, we are all equal. We know we were divided in the past to get our vote. We will not fall for that. And a taxi driver, a three-wheel taxi driver was driving. When I told him what type of work I do, that I work to unify the ethnic and religious communities in our country, he said, now we are no longer divided on those lines. Rather, we are divided according to whether we have cars, we have three-wheelers, or we have motorcycles at the petrol stations. In front of them, we are divided in that way. The class division is there. That's what he said has come. So yes, there is now a coming together of all our communities, but it could be, it's something that we have to work at. They have all united because they all want this government to go. But even here, it is noticeable that the north and east of the country has not been where the Tamils are a majority, has not been so active as the rest of the country. This uprising against the government, this revolt, has been led by the Sinhalese and is really Sinhala dominated. The minorities are supporting it. They are happy with it, but they are not playing a leading role because they feel, one thing, they are worried because in the areas that the Tamils and Muslims live, there's also the army, and it's a Sinhala dominated army. Whereas in the Sinhala areas, it's Sinhalese and Sinhala-dominated army. They don't feel so intimidated by the army. And secondly, the Tamils and Muslims feel that even if the government changes, maybe our problems, our priorities will not be taken first. It will be what the Sinhalese think is important that will be dealt with. So that is still something that we need to work at, and we need to find a way to involve. Actually, this all-party government offers a great opportunity, a historic opportunity for the Tamils to also be part of the all-party temporary government that we hope to be formed, because the main Tamil party has never joined the government except for 2-3 years in the 1960s when they did join a coalition, but they backed off finally. They left the government when the prime minister of that time, a very honorable man, said, I know that you joined us because I promised I will do certain things. I can't do them. I can't implement my promises. I will step down, he said. Then the Tamil leader said, no, we will instead leave the government and we will support you from outside. That is the only time the Tamils joined the government. Now I hope the Tamils will join our government and together forge a new path.
Right. So Ambassador Fabian, is somebody who watches developments very closely and that you've been posted in Sri Lanka and know the region well, would you have actually ever thought that the Sri Lankans would show this kind of maturity and wisdom to shed and reject divisiveness for unity on economics, for livelihood, for justice, for rights, but for livelihood? Or is this really unexpected?
Let me put it this way. During my time, two things I noticed. One is that the civil service in Sri Lanka was one of the best civil services I have ever met. You know what I mean? Not only the Foreign Office, but other departments too. Now, I wonder whether that civil service was able to give any inputs to decision making by the political leadership. And if I may say so, in 2019, the Sri Lankan voter wrongly replaced democracy by brotherocracy. That is, a set of brothers was elected, and they took decisions on their own without proper consideration, without proper inputs from the bureaucracy. And of course, there was a lot of corruption. So this is most unfortunate. And even the political leadership when I was there was of high quality, you know. And the leaders, whether it was Jayawardene or Premadasa, I mean, they were open. They listened to people. People could go and talk to them. I don't know what has been happening with the Rajapaksa. Does he listen to people, or is he deaf, you know, to the articulated demands of the people from the street and elsewhere? So there has been a certain deterioration, I'm afraid. But I have my faith in Sri Lankan people, and I do hope that sooner rather than later, they will tide over these extremely difficulties. You know, there will be an all-party government, a government that will have the full powers without any presidential interference to restore the economy, and then election. Let's hope so.
Let's hope so. Jehan, so this is it, you know, high expectations. Now, obviously, the expectations themselves are going to be spiraling out of control. And anybody who comes in, the all party, even with the opposition leader as the prime minister, it's going to be very difficult to deliver because you're starting from what, a 0.8% growth level from how is this, how would you expect them to tackle it with a time frame, with achievable goals? How would they have to go by to get that support and keep that support?
Well, I'm afraid that with our own resources, it's going to be very difficult because we actually have no foreign exchange reserves. We have zero. So much so that that today the biggest problem for us is the shortage of petrol and diesel. There are vehicles lying for 2-3 kilometers on both sides of the road, facing each on opposite sides. People are so angry and frustrated. Yet 2 weeks ago, a ship laden with fuel was almost at our port. But then it is reported that that ship turned away and actually went to India. And it went away from our port because we couldn't pay the $40 million to purchase the fuel right away. They were not prepared to give it on credit. So we are at that level, so bankrupt. And in that context, we are very actually grateful to India that India has given us credit for $3.5 billion. But now the Indian credit lines have also ended. So we are in a very bad situation. We are hoping that we will get the IMF support, but IMF support takes time to come. And IMF also has said 2 things. They want a stable government and they want a plan with evidence, that a realistic plan where we can show that we can repay our debts in the future if they are to give us money. So these are the 2 challenges for us. And to come up with that realistic plan, now the problem is that for many decades, it's not a new thing, we have been living beyond our means. We are borrowing and living quite well. And that's perhaps how Sri Lanka became an upper middle income country 4 years ago. Of course, we were at the lower level of upper middle income. The classification like $4,000 to $11,000, and we were at the $4,000 level. But we had made it to that because of and partly because of the borrowings we were getting and living well. But as a result, we were getting more and more into debt. Now we have to live according to our income. That means we have to spend less. We are spending. Our public service is over 1 million. With the army, it's 1.4 million. With our security forces, 1.4 million for a population of 22 million. It's excessive. Governments have just recruited people into the public service to get the votes also and to give jobs to their supporters. Now we have to cut back on that. But if we reduce the number of workers in government service, they will be unemployed. Then that itself, then those families will suffer a lot. And also there will be social unrest because of the unemployed number increasing. Then we have state-owned enterprises which are making huge losses. The biggest one is our airline, Sri Lankan Airlines. We were making enormous losses. So that has to be, we have to do something about that. Those are going to be difficult decisions. So now therefore we need a government with strength, with a vision, and we can also go to the people and explain to the people we have to do these things. Our tax rates are very low, extremely low. The tax rates are like 20%, whereas other countries, Western countries, 60% personal income taxes. Here, very low taxes, very low wealth taxes. It suits our upper class, and that's why I mentioned that when the people went to the presidential palace, they saw luxury, whereas their lives are different. On the streets of Colombo, you see so many BMWs and Mercedes. People tell me that you don't see these in other parts of the world, in other capitals. Since I'm not terribly interested in these cars, I don't notice these things, but people who notice them say this, that we have a lot of BMWs and compared to other countries, other capitals. So that's because the gap between the rich and the poor has been growing, and the rich have been doing very well under our not only this government, the previous governments. All that has to change. It's going to be difficult, and we need a inspired leadership, a leadership that is somewhat ascetic. Maybe the leadership that Mahatma Gandhi gave to India long ago. That type of leadership is what ascetic leadership, which says that it's not just material wealth and that makes a country good, that makes a family happy. It is other values too. So whether we will produce that, but of course we have an ancient civilization. We are very proud of our civilization, and the peacefulness of the protest. The sort of makes me think that those values are still in our society. They are in the people. unfortunately, those who get to the top don't manifest those. The ones who are in power don't manifest those values. But maybe in this crisis, we must get those values manifested in our political leadership, which is there among the people.
I was just writing this, no looting, no violence. I mean, they're inside that, they're not tearing anything. They're watching television, they're plunging into the pool, they're having a good time in their own way.
Yes.
But nobody's done anything which we saw on the streets of the richest country of the world, America, not so long ago either. Ambassador Fabian, I'm going to ask a cynical question. I mean, in the people's movement, you feel that any questions about geopolitics are cynical because it's so fresh and it's so vibrant and it's so passionate. But China, America, who do you think is going to start playing in these troubled waters first, and who's going to gain from this or try and gain from this?
Well, China so far has been, what shall I say, missing in action, practically. America came out with a statement, and correct me if I'm wrong, did India come out with a statement after America did? The statement saying that we stand by the people of India after America asked Sri Lanka to move, and do things in the right way, please. Is that correct?
Yes, we did. Yes.
Anyway, that if you let me, I want to say a word about what India has done, what India could have done. Now, as Jehan said, India did, give the line of credit. I've seen a figure of $3.8 billion. Very impressive. But I believe India could have done more. And I believe that India should have hosted an international conference on Sri Lanka's economic crisis. And G20 plus China should have been invited, plus the World Bank and the IMF. Jehan said about the IMF giving assistance, and he mentioned two conditions, political stability and debt rescheduling. There is also a third element, that is IMF will ask for structural adjustment, cutting down government subsidy, so the prices of essentials would go up. In fact, IMF has, aggravated many political instabilities. Anyway, so if India had convened that conference, say in April, okay, then pressure could have been put on IMF and World Bank, to cut through their red tape and accelerate, the assistance. Moreover, I believe that India, China, and the rest of the G20 should have pooled their resources together and provided immediate assistance to Sri Lanka by way of line of credit and by way of supplies. India alone can't do it. Now, my question to you is why India did not think of doing it, why India did not do it. Is it lack of imagination, or is it lack of, what shall I say, ability to focus on a diplomatic matter?
Well, I think that answer will come shortly, or if at all. I think we've covered a lot of what's happening today. I don't want to ask any of you to make predictions about tomorrow, because you started by saying that we don't know how it will move on tomorrow. I'll end with one question to you, Jehan. I know you're caught up right now in Sri Lanka, but you know the South Asian region as well. Do you think this is a signal for South Asia, could be a signal for South Asia, that there is something like people's power? Or do you think it's very peculiar to Sri Lanka, given your levels of awareness and, education also, and a certain kind of culture that we associate with your country?
Well, we have, on the contrary, we always admire India. I mean, in that, I'm sure we imagine and just imagine that India is better than we are on these issues, such as we say that Indians always say they are Indians, they never say they are from their particular regions, whereas we say we are Sinhalese, Tamils, and Muslims, and Indians have a great sense of pride in their country, which we don't have. That's one. Then secondly, we feel that the Indian media and civil society have been much more active and much more, they think much deeper than our civil society and our media. So we admire India also in the same way that you say that Sri Lankans are very, that we are cultured and democratic in our ways. Yeah, I think the lesson that we have to offer is that, yes, that the people actually, they want justice in their society. They want justice, they want fair play. And but they are divided, them. Sometimes politicians manipulate them. And the danger of manipulation is that the conflicts get worse. Like in Sri Lanka, they got worse because our politicians exploited nationalism and racism and polarized our people. And then finally they come to a point where they can't deliver results. And then the whole society gets into turmoil. And I suppose Sri Lanka gives early warning. It's an early warning that there needs to be greater social justice. We need to think not of just growth, of economic growth, but also of distribution, how the money is being distributed, that everyone participates in the economy, but also in decision making, that the ethnic minorities also, I mean, we went through war. So the ethnic minorities must be treated with respect. There must be pluralism and not just majoritarian thinking that just because one group is bigger than the other group in size, that they therefore should make the decisions. Or that because one group came first and the other group came second, that the group that came first are the true sons of the soil. I think those are all lessons from Sri Lanka. And in a way, I'm not unhappy that we are going through this terrible period, because it's going to make us rethink. It's making our people rethink. And I'm sure it's going to throw up new values and new leaders. And I'm also happy that Ambassador Fabian, what he talked about, the international conference that can be called, and India can still call it. It's not too late. And maybe the time is right now, because if it happened earlier, maybe the government, we won't see the transformation that we are now seeing. We wouldn't have seen this manifestation of people power, the decency of our people power, the goodness of our people power. For underlying it, there's also the violent elements which manifested in the burning of the Prime Minister's house. So again, to say that even there is some doubt as to whether it was instigated or not. We are not sure that it was the people who were protesting who did it, or some other groups. There is that suspicion even now. But nevertheless, I think that that an international conference is absolutely necessary. International support is necessary. India's leadership is necessary. It's important, and it's important that we see India that there must be a paradigm shift. For too long, our country has seen India. We go upon our ancient history, and our history says that the Buddhist monks and the religion was very close to the leaders, and that India was a historical enemy. We must go beyond those paradigms of the past. We have to sever the relationship between religion and the state. And we have to make our religion secure. We must make our Buddhists secure. And in the same way, we must see India differently. And India has behaved, I mean, in an exemplary way at this time, by and large. And so I think we must forge a new bond of relationship with India, which is a much older civilization than ours also, and so much more powerful and populous, and can offer us so much.
Right, absolutely. But I could see Ambassador Fabian nodding his head, so I have to ask him this last question. And taking off from what you said, Jehan, is it a signal for South Asia? Is it an early warning for South Asia, as he said?
Well, I'll put it this way. First of all, I admire the Sri Lankan people for their, what should I say, persistence. I admire them. I do not know whether the rest of South Asia, in the rest of South Asia, whether we can expect the people to behave with that tenacity of purpose. You know what I mean? But let me say that the economic situation in Pakistan, we know it's not that, it's perilous. And even in India, it is not yet perilous, but I'm sorry to say that we are moving in a direction which can be perilous. But then, of course, India is in a different category in the sense that if India goes to IMF for aid, well, India will get it, without much delay. So situation is different. But I think, as you correctly said, the leadership in the rest of South Asia, they should look sharp. They should be aware. They should read the writing on the wall.
Right. Thank you so much. This was very interesting. Thank you. And I will be in touch with you, gentlemen, because this situation is going to continue for a while and be evolving. Thank you.